He collapsed on the ice and never got back up. It happened in November of 1995 to one of the most iconic pairs in figure skating, Sergei Grinkov and Ekaterina Gordeeva. He was 28 years old, an Olympic champion, in peak condition, training as usual. So how does someone like that simply fall during practice and never stand again? To understand that day, we need to go back, long before the medals, before the sold-out arenas, before they became the definition of pair skating. She was 11, he was 15, two children in a Moscow rink, paired together by coaches. Not because of destiny, not because of romance, simply because their technique fit and their heights matched. In pair skating, partnership is built on trust. When he lifts her above his head with one arm, when he throws her into the air knowing she will rotate blindly and will land back into his hands, hesitation isn't allowed. One mistake can mean a broken wrist, a concussion, a career ending. At first, they were just partners. He was quiet and serious, already physically strong. She was small, disciplined, determined not to fall behind. They trained for hours every day. Cold rinks, endless repetition, falls that left bruises, arguments that ended in silence, improvement that came slowly, and then they started winning. Junior events turned into senior medals, 4 world championships, 3 European championships, Olympic gold in Calgary in the late 1980s. They were still very young, but they skated with unusual calm. No visible panic before a lift, no last-second corrections before a throw. They moved cleanly, precisely. Commentators often said they looked completely synchronized, like they always knew what the other would do half a second before it happened. But for years, there was no romance. Ekaterina later admitted she felt too small, too ordinary. Sergei paid attention to other girls. On the ice, they held hands thousands of times. Off the ice, he barely noticed her. So what changed? Growing up side by side changes things. Long bus rides between competitions, shared pressure before finals, quiet conversations after victories. Gradually, the distance disappeared. In the late 1980s, during a championship season in Europe, their relationship shifted. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't sudden. It simply settled into something deeper. They married in the early 1990s, soon after their daughter Daria was born. Around that time, the Soviet Union collapsed. The country was unstable. Many athletes left for better opportunities abroad. Sergei and Ekaterina moved to the United States and joined the professional tour Stars on Ice. It was a new chapter. Sold-out arenas across North America, financial stability, a house, a routine, a young family balancing rehearsals with parenting. But they weren't finished competing. After stepping away from amateur skating, they made a rare decision. They returned to the Olympics. Most pairs never attempt that. The sport is too demanding, the competition gets younger, the body wears down. In Lillehammer, years after their first Olympic gold, they delivered 2 clean programs and won again. That second gold wasn't just another medal. It confirmed something. They weren't just champions of their era. They were one of the greatest pairs in the history of the sport. By 1995, they were at the peak of their professional careers, successful, respected, stable family life. From the outside, nothing looked fragile, except that summer, Sergei occasionally mentioned back pain. Not chest pain, not heart symptoms, just discomfort in his back. Athletes live with pain, they train through it, no one connected it to something life-threatening. November 20th, Lake Placid. Regular practice, music playing, blades carving clean arcs into the ice. They were running through a program when Sergei suddenly slowed down. He bent slightly forward. Ekaterina thought it was his back again. Then he collapsed. At first, it wasn't clear what had happened. Coaches skated toward him. Someone called for medical help. Ekaterina tried to move closer, but she was held back as paramedics rushed onto the ice. They attempted resuscitation there, in the middle of the rink. It was a massive heart attack. He was 28 years old. The shock was immediate. How does an Olympic champion collapse during practice? How does someone in peak physical condition die without warning? The answer came later. Doctors discovered that Sergei had a severe congenital narrowing of a major coronary artery, a defect that had never been diagnosed. According to medical findings, he likely experienced a small, silent heart episode the night before. It went unnoticed. It could have felt like fatigue or muscle strain. By the time he collapsed during practice, the damage was already critical. Within minutes, the partnership that had lasted since childhood ended. News spread quickly. Fans around the world struggled to process it. They had watched these two grow from children into legends. On the ice, they represented stability, precision, absolute trust. Ekaterina was 24. She had spent nearly her entire life skating beside him. Childhood, adolescence, adulthood, every victory included Sergei. She later wrote in her book, My Sergei, that when they skated, their hearts beat as one. For months, the rink felt impossible, but skating had defined her since she was 11 years old. A year later, she returned. Alone. The program was called Celebration of Life. It wasn't theatrical, it wasn't exaggerated. It was controlled, restrained, until the emotion broke through. She couldn't hold back tears. In the audience, their daughter watched her mother skate without the partner who had always been there to catch her. That was the first time the world saw Ekaterina Gordeeva alone on the ice. He collapsed during practice. He never got back up. Sergei Grinkov was 28 years old, and that day, figure skating lost one of its greatest champions.